thank you, Mickey, Ibarra, and thank you for inviting me here at the Latino Leaders Network to introduce my buddy and my friend. I know this is going to astonish and surprise many of you. I actually wrote this out. I'm sure Janet Murguel would have preferred that had you written my written text when I spoke at National Council of La Raza a week ago in LA. But let me just say this. So I came to say thank you also. There's very few opportunities that you have to say thank you to people that have been important in your life and in your career and where I'm at today. And I wanted to come and say hi to Juan and to thank him. You know, it's interesting today where I'm situated and the position of leadership and the voice that I've been granted and privileged to have. But I remember back in 1983 when I went to then the Exelon Corporation and I couldn't get a job as a meter reader. And to the JP Morgan Chases of the world, and I couldn't get a job as a teller. And I ran for a public office, and the people didn't even want to elect me to public office. So I struck out there. I couldn't get elected, I couldn't get a job at a bank, at a utility company, nowhere. As much as I said I had those bilingual skills and I was ready and energetic, and they would be proud of me in the future, even though they couldn't see anything today. But I just came to say thank you, Juan. Because I was driving a cab in the city of Chicago, a good job. It paid the rent, it kept my family fed, and it was honorable work. But that's what I was doing, driving a cab in the city of Chicago and defeated the first time I ran for public office. And not defeated by a little bit, I only got 24% of the vote. But you know what? Thank you, Juan, because you saw something in me, as you have seen in thousands of others. As you have seen not only me and thousands of others. And he gave me a job. And he said, go and register people to vote and create a better future and create more power. Juan used to always say, we're growing in population, but now we have to grow in influence and in power. And that's what I went and did. Thank you, Juan, for allowing me to set a goal and to set my career. Thank you for seeing in me some potential, as you have seen in so many others. I wanted to say that first and foremost to you. What can you say about Dr. Juan Andrade? He's an iconic Chicago leader. People cannot say that all the important leaders from Chicago are Puerto Rican. Because Juan Andrade must be included on that list. And not just of Chicago leaders, not just of Midwestern leaders, not just of Mexican American or Hispanic leaders, although he is all of those things. But he must be included on the list of American leaders. He is from Texas, but we have learned to overlook that handicap. Ay, Ted Cruz es tuyo, man. I gotta carry all the Chicago stuff. He picked cotton, he packed meat, he worked on an assembly line, he sold newspapers, he washed pots and pans like I did. So he's really an American that has done jobs a lot of other people do not want to do. And today, as the president of the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute, he can proudly say he's been a leader in mobilizing and creating the Latino vote, with more than 2.2 million voters registered. He has helped educate our community with 1.2 million invested in scholarship and internship. And his organization are a key pillar in the foundation, the bedrock of which the growth and empowerment of the Latino community in the United States, he has grown brick by brick. We are where we are today because of the people in the halls of Congress are starting to understand the power of the Latino vote. They are starting to recognize what a huge number of American-born Latino citizens will do to the politics and policies of this nation. With 900,000 Latino U.S. citizens turning 18 every year, that's more than 2,000 a day, we have a responsibility to build on Dr. Juan Andrade's work to make sure they are registered and that they become voters. With 8.8 million green card holders who have 5 years in the status of legal permanent residence and can apply for citizenship, therefore, today, we need to make sure they do it, in fact, because citizens and do register to vote and become reliable voters, not just every 4 years, but every time there's an election. And of that particular group, I want you to understand that 6 million of them are Mexican immigrants to the United States. And every time I hear them talk about gangbangers and tattoos and drugs and criminals and people who only come here to destroy America, I think about those 6 million Mexicans that can become citizens of the United States, and I say, let's make them citizens of the United States and see if they do not respect our community more. A lot of the reporters and politicians during the immigration reform debate focused on who might get legalized. They focused on who might get legalized, the 11 million who are undocumented. And the 13 or 14 years down the road, who might apply for citizenship of those that became, and who might register to vote. But you know what? Juan Andrade taught us that they're worried about the wrong set of voters. The voters that Republicans and other politicians must worry about. The voters that will determine a lot of American politics for a generation or two to come, those voters are already citizens, are already eligible to vote. They are already in the pipeline. Our job is to follow the legacy set forth by Dr. Juan Andrade's work and to turn that potential into reality and register them to vote today. Ladies and gentlemen, our friend and your friend, Dr. Juan Andrade.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Yeah, find a place for my hat there. Thank you all very much. Y'all probably hear me say y'all from time to time, because as y'all can probably tell, I'm not originally from Chicago. And people wonder, you know, because you Texans say y'all this and y'all that. What do you say when you mean everybody? Well, you know, it's very simple. When we mean everybody, we just say all y'all. So thank all y'all for that. And Congressman, thank you so much. You know, it's said that gratitude is the most powerful human emotion. And I think that speaks for many of us who are grateful through people like Mickey for doing what he continues to do and always lifting up our community. And over the last 10 years, selecting someone, you know, that he wants to lift up, that believes that deserves a place and a time at the podium to share his or her story. Because as Mickey said a while ago, there are wonderful and powerful stories that we have to share in our community. And the more we can share those stories, the better. The richer we become when we learn to share our stories. Not just what we do in our daily lives, and serving the community, but to sharing our story, that there is power in those stories. Many of y'all have listened to young people, children, many of the undocumented children that the Congressman referred to. Their stories are so powerful that we need to listen to them. And because the more we can listen to our youth, I think the better we are as a community. So please take time to listen to our young people. The Congressman shared with you a little bit of my background as a farm worker, things that I'm very proud of. I'm glad that at the age of 4, my parents took me out to pick cotton, where I stayed all through junior high and high school, to learn what hard work really means, to learn what family unity is all about. Because in my home, there were 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. And we had 3 bedrooms and a path. That's not a bath, that's a path. El baño estaba afuera. And so naturally, my mother and father had 1 bedroom. My sister had to have her bedroom. And, well, the 4 boys had to share their bedroom. And we slept head to foot. You know, my brothers would have their head here, the other one would have his head over there, feet up here, head over there, feet up here. I was the youngest of 4. It wasn't fair. I was sleeping between 2 brothers and 2 sets of feet. You know, and so you learn to appreciate some of those things that you can learn as a farm worker and a child growing up in the fields. Even our dog, my biggest brother, my oldest brother Daniel, had this thing for dogs. He loved dogs. And I got bitten by a dog once, and so that ended that. I did not share his love of dogs or any kind of pets after that. But I felt sorry for our dog, because even growing up and on a farm labor camp outside of Waco, Texas, I'd look at that poor dog, and we were so crowded in there. You talk about, me río por no llorar. We were so crowded in there. I don't know how that dog would make it, around us. And then I noticed that even the dog learned to wag his tail this way, because there was no room this way. And also learn how to make food stretch, how to make it go as far as possible. We kept it simple. In the morning, we would have frijoles con huevo. For lunch, we would have huevos con frijoles. And for dinner, we would have frijoles a huevo. The highlights of my career can be summed up this way. The highlights were being when I was first arrested. That was a highlight in my life. I didn't say anything about it for 30 years, but at the time at the White House, President Clinton decided to share that story. And so word got out. And so then I felt more at ease talking about it. But being arrested was a highlight. I was fired from the only job I ever applied for. That was a highlight in my career. And again, I was arrested again and again. And those were highlights. And I share those with you in summary because Mickey asked me to focus on why I do what I do. What I have done is a little bit of what we're celebrating. But why is something that Mickey feels needs to be shared. And those things, those experiences of being arrested, of being fired and arrested again, is why I do what I do. Why it has given reason and meaning to the experiences that I have had. And I'm just very grateful to all y'all for that opportunity. I want to just take a moment of personal privilege here and ask the USHLI table if they would please stand. These are young people who have received scholarships, who have received internships, who have been employed at USHLI. And we're very, very proud of you, very grateful to you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking again my good friend Mickey Ibarra and the board of Latino Leaders Network for this great honor. And I've been to many of these luncheons, and I've watched in awe Mickey's ability to bring so many prominent people together from all walks of life to honor and celebrate the life and work of so many people whom I have long admired. God is my witness, and I'm telling you the gospel truth. It never, ever crossed my mind once that I would be the honoree on a day like today. But thank you, Mickey makes things happen. And I am so grateful to you, Mickey, for selecting me and the board to receive this honor today. Please give Mickey Ibarra a well-deserved round of applause. And to our Congressman Luis Gutierrez, I thank him for that kind introduction, because he's a special person that can be defined in some ways, in many different ways, by different people. In my mind, Congressman, I would just say that you are the embodiment of a good conscience. You are the voice of justice in the swamp of dysfunctional government. You are the hope of millions who still live in the shadows, the comfort to the millions of children who live every day with the fear of losing their parents and the uncertainty of their own future. Thank you, Congressman, for your years of service. And while we're taking a moment to acknowledge some people, I know Mickey has already made some introductions, and I don't want to duplicate that. But I've got to single out one person that has been so amazing and so inspiring, and it has lifted up so many people throughout his distinguished career, not the least of whom is, my wife is an English teacher, so I'm afraid to say this wrong, including me. Right? Did I get it right? But I don't know a single person in my lifetime who has had more influence from the highest level to the smallest barrio than Raúl Izaguirre. And I have to again mention one more person that Mickey has already mentioned, and so I'll just spare you the details, but a very special person in the room is Lidia Martinez. Please give it up for and show her some love. But the recognition that Mickey has orchestrated on my behalf has helped make my wife very proud to be married to me. And it has also made my children very proud to have me as their father. And it has also made me officially the most overrated Latino in the United States. But Mickey works that way. And the first time that I received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the age of 50, long time ago. And Mickey had nothing to do with that. I just happened to turn 50, and you know what happens when you turn 50? I got a letter of recognition from AARP. But Mickey has had a lot to do with other recognitions. And though he will never, ever admit it in public or even privately, I think he had everything to do with the highest honor I and very few other Latinos have ever received. And that's a medal from the President of the United States. Mickey, thank you so much for that. And while being decorated by the President for the performance of exemplary deeds of service for the nation, it's indeed a high honor. But the highlight of meeting three fellow honorees that day was really the highlight. Those three honorees were Muhammad Ali, Hank Aaron, and Elizabeth Taylor. Only, Mickey could put me in a place to share the stage with them. And as I looked at them and all, heroes and legends, I thought, well, 3 hits and a miss, that's not bad. Before I go any further, I really want to thank God for the life I've had a chance to live and a very understanding and long-suffering wife. For it's not I being honored today, but the Almighty who called me to serve, and my wife who let me answer that call. God picked her out for me, which was very cool, because he never gets it wrong. And we've been together this year for 50 years, my wife Elena. And those of y'all who know me know what I mean by long suffering, and what she has had to endure. There's a special place in heaven for her. I'm standing on a trap door, and Mickey has assured me that he will not hesitate to pull the switch and will make me disappear if we don't finish on time. But I got to tell you, this is the funniest, this is the most difficult speech I have ever been asked to give. It's about me, about myself. Mickey asked me to not talk about what, but talk about why. He said, we all know what, tell us why. And that is something that I've never done publicly in my career of 44 years. I've given this speech a lot of thought because I've never really had to think about myself in this way. And as I gave it more thought, I thought about the words of the Apostle Paul, where the Apostle Paul said, sisters and brothers, let's not forget why we're here. And that is why we are here. Because at that time, when the Apostle Paul wrote that scripture, people were saying, I am with this group. I am what today we would call, I'm with Republicans. I am with Democrats. I am independent. I am whatever. And as though to suggest some kind of division. And Paul saw that beginning to happen among the Corinthians. And he said, sisters and brothers, let's not forget why we're here. Latinos, whether you are Democrat or Republicans or independents, it doesn't matter what affiliation. Why we're here is for our community. We are here for our families. We are here for our children. And it is incumbent upon us to do everything that we can to improve the quality of their lives and ensure that they have a bright and better and productive future. That is why we are here. At the LULAC convention in New York, God put a person in my path and gave us time to share this moment about today. And asked me, are you ready? I said, no, I'm not, frankly. I'm not quite sure how to phrase all this. And Michelle Mingus, where is Michelle Mingus? I think she had to leave. Oh, that's right. She said she was catching a train or something to New York. But Michelle sat down with me and helped me think this through and just asked me a simple question and said 3 words that would describe why you do what you do. 3 words. And that, and while that conversation continued, and I continued to think about it for a couple of weeks later, trying to, find those 3 characteristics, those 3 things that I can share with you as to why I do what I do. That kind of crystallized in my mind what the focus of this message would be. And I'm very, very grateful to her for that. We mentioned a lot of words. We talked about empowerment. Yes, you could say I've had and been involved in that. Youth, serving our young people, of course. Building a foundation for future generations, yes. Leadership, yes. Community service, yes. But narrow it down to 3, she said. And I narrowed it down this way. And so if you'll bear with me a little bit. The 3 that I would like to share with you is dreamer, servant leadership, and faith. Because to understand why I do what I do and have been doing, now going into my 5th decade, you need to know when this all started. Because I was born into a generation of dreamers, just like Raúl Izaguirre. Some of us had that opportunity to be born into a generation of dreamers during what was called the forced Americanization of the Southwest. This forced Americanization took certain characteristics. When the United States came to us, we Mexicans had our hands full in the Southwest. More Mexicans were lynched during that period of forced Americanization. Few people know that more Latinos, almost all Mexicans, were lynched than all the blacks that were lynched in the South. And we need to be mindful of that. Mexicans owned tens of millions of acres, land that covered entire states, but that land was stolen by the Americans, and thousands of Mexicans were killed fighting to protect their ownership. It's estimated in some reports that over 200,000 Mexicanos were killed by the Texas Rangers during this period of forced Americanization. And this forced Americanization took certain characteristics. We were not allowed to speak Spanish in public places, and our schools were little more than run-down barns that were better suited for cattle. We had very few Mexican teachers, because even when I graduated from college, barely 1% of Latinos had a college education. Mexicans were denied due process in the courts because it was against the law to testify in Spanish, the only language we knew. Mexicans were expected to quietly endure the disparity of what became known as Mexican wages, which meant whites were paid more for doing the same work. Farm workers had to bring their own drinking water to stay hydrated while working 12-hour days under that unbearably hot sun. In all the years that I worked as a farm worker, I never saw a restroom in the field. You just had to walk and walk and walk until you felt you were far enough out of sight to restore your comfort level as best you could. And our hourly rate was paid dependent entirely on the farmer because we had no bargaining unit. Mexicans were allowed to vote, however, if we owned property, if we passed a literacy test, and if we could pay a $1.75 poll tax. The poll tax was hard enough, but it came with no guarantees that there would be anybody running for office that was worth $1.75. Yet when it came to defending America, in World War II, 500,000 Latinos, mostly Mexicans, answered the call and served with honor, courage, and valor. In one battle, one Latino captured 1,500 enemy troops. One guy captured 1,500 because he fought so hard, the 1,500 thought they were outnumbered. Many Latinos received the Medal of Honor for their bravery and sacrifice under fire. But while these men and women were fighting for America, many veterans who died later were not even allowed to be buried next to white people in public cemeteries in their own hometown. I'm not saying this to indict America in any way. That was when it was the way it was. But to describe just conditions that gave rise to the greatest generation of dreamers in our nation's history. This is when this began to give reason as to why I've lived the life that I have. These deplorable conditions and brutal injustices produced a generation of dreamers who dared to dream. And former Mayor Marty Chavez last night shared with us a little bit as to why it's important for us to share the story about those who came before us. It's important because they were dreamers who dared to dream. They weren't just another person. They dared to dream under the most adverse conditions. that despite the brutality of the times, despite the lynching, despite the discrimination, despite all of these things that we had to endure, they still dared to dream. God put them in our path so that they could dream and dare to dream. They were the men and women of LULAC. I had the good fortune of growing up and reading about how Dr. Hector Garcia, not Hector Garcia, but how LULAC, men and women, were organizing in Texas to help fight those conditions, to fight for our civil rights when the conditions that I just described were at their peak. There were dreamers like Dr. Hector Garcia who dared to dream that he and his fellow veterans could create the American GI Forum to defend the dignity of those who served and those who gave the ultimate sacrifice and to pay for the education of their children. Dreamers like Dr. Antonia Pantoja, who dared to dream that she and her Puerto Rican brothers and sisters could create Aspira and give us entire generations of well-educated aspirantes who would stay in school, serve the community, lead our organizations, and seek public office. People like Ernesto de la Garza and Herman Gallegos and Dr. Julian Zamora, who dared to dream that they could create an organization that would become known as NCLR, to change public policies at the highest level that impacted every segment of American life and work. Dreamers like Jack Otero and Eva Zavala and Damaso Seda and Maria Portalatin, who dared to dream that they and their fellow labor leaders could create LACLA to politically empower 1.5 million trade unionists and involve their families in the electoral process. Dreamers like Hector Barreto Sr., who dared to dream that he and a band of entrepreneurs could create the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to organize over 1 million Latino business owners into a powerful national and international economic power base. Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, who dared to dream that they could create the United Farm Workers Union to fight for the right of farm workers to organize and bargain collectively. Congressman Ed Roybal, who dared to dream that he and a few colleagues could create CHCI and NALEO to sponsor programs that would help Latino students learn more about how government works and to organize Latino elected officials into a more powerful voice in public affairs, respectively. Mario Bledo and other attorneys who dared to dream that they could create MALDEF, a Mexican-American law firm, to defend Latinos against racial discrimination and other injustices. Willie Velazquez, the legendary Willie Velazquez, and Maclovio Barraza, who dared to dream that they could create SVREP, a nonpartisan voter registration education project to politically empower Mexicans across the Southwest. Dreamers like Ray Gonzalez, Hank Lacayo, and Willie Velazquez, who dared to dream that they could create USHLI, to organize nonpartisan voter registration and education campaigns, to motivate Latino youth to participate in the electoral process. There were many other dreamers during that time, and since that time, to dream about creating organizations that would serve the Cuban, the Dominican, and Puerto Rican communities. These are just a few of the many dreamers who stood for us during the darkest decades of anti-Latino sentiment in American history. It was their leadership that persuaded Congress to pass the American GI Bill and the Bilingual Education Act, the Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act, together with our African-American brothers and sisters. These dreamers risked their lives to speak out against wholesale lynching of Latinos and risked their jobs to fight for change. They risked their lives to unite workers and sacrifice whatever it took to win the fight for our rights. As co-founder of USHLI, I'm proud to have been born into this great generation of dreamers who dared to dream that we could create our own institutions. And one of the youngest of those dreamers, I am now one of the few who are still alive, and the longest serving president of a national Latino organization. But the conditions that I described above are reasons why I have done what I have. I was born a dreamer and given a mission that became my purpose in life. And every day I get up is another day to fight the good fight. As I survey this room, I know many of you had nothing to do with winning the rights we have today, but that's okay because you weren't born yet. But while you had nothing to do with winning these rights, I believe that destiny has ordained you to be the guardians of our rights. And believe me, we need to be vigilant and fight to defend our rights, no matter the price you have to pay. Why? Because we have to fight because the lynching of Latinos is not over. No, we're not being hung by the neck, but we're being lynched in other ways. Over 20 states have passed laws to suppress the Latino vote. Bilingual education is being eliminated in many places. The Voting Rights Act is being decimated. States are withholding funds from universities who offer Mexican American studies. Mexicans were evicted from a bar in the state of Oregon for drinking in Spanish. Unaccompanied children are being sent back home to some of the most violent cities in the world. Over 1 million Latino family units have been dismembered through the failed deportation policies that we've had. Hate crimes against Latinos are at an all-time high, and the list goes on. Young people, don't let this happen on your watch. We will win the fight for respect and the full integration of Latinos into American society. But more of us will have to pay the price. More sacrifices will have to be made. But don't give up. Don't ever give up fighting for our community. I was arrested for speaking Spanish to students who didn't understand English. It seemed unjust. And as a young father with one son, and being arrested and effectively ending your teaching career, that was a price to be paid, but a price worth paying. Why? Because now teachers are paid a bonus for being able to do what got me arrested. Justice is on our time. Justice is on the side of time, and time is on our side. I got fired from the top job in Ohio State government for doing the right thing. And when I went back as a keynote speaker at the 25th anniversary celebration of that agency that I helped create, the guy who worked for the governor who had me fired picked me up at the airport and chauffeured me around all day. I lost my classroom, but was given a national audience. I lost my job in one state, and now I cover 40. Don't be afraid, young people, of consequences. Don't be afraid to pay the price. Don't be afraid of the consequences, because take it from this happy warrior. Consequences only make the victories all that much sweeter. The Bible teaches us the second point that I want to mention. This is a lot more brief. Mickey's jaw just dropped. I'm watching out for this trap door. And this is about servant leadership, very quickly. In the Gospel of Matthew, the Lord saw the people suffering, and it says that he was moved with compassion. He saw that the people were hungry, and he fed them by the thousands. He didn't say, if we feed them, more will come. Being moved with compassion defines servant leadership. When the Good Samaritan saw the man by the side of the road, he didn't ask him for papers. He didn't ask him if he had a visa. He didn't call the Minutemen. He didn't call the Border Patrol. He didn't call Sheriff Arpaio or any one of these. He showed compassion and gave the immigrant food and water and a place to stay until he was ready to get back on his way. That's servant leadership. Servant leadership is about believing that we're here to serve and not to be served. Servant leadership is serving others, helping others, and doing for others. In the Bible, there's a story where the Lord sat with apostles around him, and the apostles asked him, Lord, who is the greatest leader? And I could just see, Peter, getting ready to be called, out on this one. That, of course, it's Peter, upon whom he is a rock. Maybe he said he rocks, I don't know. Upon whom I will build my church. And interestingly, what the Lord said to the disciples, the greatest leader is the greatest servant. The greatest leader is the greatest servant. So we are here to serve, young people. My brothers and sisters, we're here to serve and not to be served. It's one of the things that I've learned about servant leadership. And I'd share with you and close on this note that it is not success. Success is not measured by how high you climb. It's measured by how far you can reach. That is what defines servant leadership. That is what leadership is all about. Sure, we care about our careers. We do want to rise to the next level, but only if it serves a greater purpose. Only if it serves a greater good. The leadership is defined by not how high you climb, but how far you can reach. Let me just close, really for sure, because Mickey is now on his feet. I'm grateful for the recognition, the honors that I've received. But the only one, and I've not sought them, never even thought imaginable. But there is one, I can tell you. There is one honor and one recognition that I really, really seek. It's a recognition that I think about all the time. And I'm still seeking to hear that voice of God welcome me into paradise, saying, well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter now thou into the joy of the Lord. That's what it's all about. That recognition that many of us get needs to come at that level. And remembering why we're here, that we are here to serve and not to be served. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for this great honor. Thank you all very much.
David, you're right here. Everybody, David, our board member. Okay? Everybody put a hand on here. We'll crop you out.